I am Judy Bateman, a member of the League of Women Voters. I am not a resident of this district. The League of Women Voters is a trusted national, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy.
Can everybody hear Judy?
No.
Now? Sorry. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. As a League of Women Voters member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role, such as this one, that has great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning about how you can make a similar impact, I would encourage you to pick up some of the League's information available tonight or visit our website at lwvoa.org. The League of Women Voters does not endorse any candidate or political party. Views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and the sponsors take no responsibility. The format for this forum has been established by the League of Women Voters. We ask that the audience remain silent during the forum. Please turn off all cell phones. We ask that candidates answer the questions with their views only and not interrupt another candidate. The candidates will be answering questions submitted by the audience and screened for duplication and appropriateness by Jerry Burden, a League member. Carol Beeman is in the back. Will be circulating with paper and pencils for your questions. Please turn your questions into her. The format is as follows. Candidates will be given 1 minute for opening statements in alphabetical order. They will have 1 minute to answer each question, and there will be 1 minute closing statement in reverse order. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer the questions. The timer is Laura Gagola, another League member. The candidates running for the 6-year terms are Amy Butters, Katrina Collins, Kevin Deegan-Krause, Raylon Leaks-May, Jim O'Donnell, Bradford Parks, Jim Flegger, and Keith Warnick. We will begin the opening statements with Ms. Butters.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Amy Butters. I'm running for school board because I see several issues looming over the district that must be addressed. What will happen to our district as our state continues to make cuts in education? What will happen if families keep sending their kids to other districts? And what will happen if parts of our community continue to feel disconnected from our schools? Our school board needs to provide vision, goals, and clear direction to confront these looming issues. My 3 daughters have had great experiences here, and I want to ensure this positive experience happens for all kids today and in the future. It frustrates me that we have all kinds of great things going on in our schools, but I still hear from families throughout our district who are struggling with their school choice. I'm frustrated when I hear of families who leave because the schools aren't living up to their expectations. I know our district can do better. I will make it a top priority of the board to understand these problems, to talk with the community, and to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Good evening, and I'm Katrina Collins, and thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry if I seem a little rushed, but I just got done feeding the varsity football team. It's something I have done for the past 7 years, and I love every minute of it. At these dinners, I have a chance to talk to the team, mostly juniors and seniors, and I ask them how their grades are and how school is going in general. Often the boys ask me why I care about them so much, and my answer is I care about all the students at Ferndale. I believe they can all succeed. I can believe they can all graduate, and I tell them that graduating can open many doors for them. I also tell them that when they graduate, I might just even be able to hand them their diploma because I'm on the school board. I take every minute that I'm on the board very seriously, and I've never made a decision lightly. I spend many hours researching and reading all I can about the issues that come before me. In the 5 years that I've been on the board, many great things have happened, from 2,500 plus students graduating to new technology in all the schools. There are many good things happening in the district, and I can't list them all. But there are things that can be improved, definitely. So that is why I'm committed and passionate and want to continue working to keep Ferndale schools the best full service.
I'm sorry. Time's up. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
Hi, my name is Kevin Deegan-Krause, and I have the honor to be in front of you as a candidate for school board. I also have the honor to be Elena and Peter's dad, Bridget's husband, Katrina's neighbor, all of your neighbors, really. And recently, I've had the honor to be part of a team of 4 people, three of the most extraordinary people I've ever met, Amy Butters, Raylon Leaks-May, and Jim O'Donnell. Together, our last names spell B-O-L-D, and I have the honor to be the D in bold. As the D in bold, I will do 2 things on the school board. The first thing I will do is to take concrete steps to solve our retention problem. Too many parents, too many students go elsewhere, and there are too many simple solutions that we can do to fix those problems now. The second thing I will do is to ask the hard questions that simply aren't being asked. Questions about contracts, questions about money flows, and questions about why we haven't done strategic planning in over 12 years. I can do these things because I'm a parent, a teacher, a researcher, a citizen, but maybe most importantly because I was head of the Ferndale Library Board for 5 years. We took a struggling institution with challenges and turned it into a gem. We can do the same with the schools.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Good evening. I'm Raylon Leaks-May, Ferndale resident for 22 years. My 5 beautiful children have attended Kennedy, Roosevelt, Washington, Grant, Best Junior High, and Ferndale High School. One of my children currently attends school out of district due to special needs. My child did not receive proper accommodations and services while in district, therefore I had to move him elsewhere. One reason I'm running for the school board is to strengthen the district's special education offerings addressing systemic problems that I have experienced, not only with my son, but have heard from other parents. For me, this began with my son, but has grown into something much, much bigger. My experiences and fresh perspective enable me to be a strong advocate for parents, students, teachers to address tough issues facing the district, including student retention, special education, and community engagement. With your vote, I will work to address these issues far more effectively.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. I'm Jim O'Donnell. I'm the O in bold. I have 3 children who've gone to 4 different Ferndale schools, Grant for preschool, Kennedy, the middle school, and the high school. I'm running because I have 2 main concerns. First, we lose too many families to other districts and to private schools. Second, our academic achievement is uneven and achievement gaps are too large. You should expect more, but we can fix this. How? First, we're going to acknowledge the problems. Bold will do this. The incumbents do not. Second, we need real strategic planning that involves the whole community. We will do this. They've continually put it off. Third, we need strong financial planning and modern financial management tools. I do this successfully every day in my job. The incumbents make excuses not to do it. I have the experience to do this job well, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Good evening. I'm Brad Parks, and I'm running for Ferndale School Board. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us, the audience for showing up, and I want to remind anyone at home watching this on TV that the camera adds 10 pounds, and I noticed at least 2 cameras. I have been a Ferndale Schools resident for the past 25 years. Since my daughter started school 10 years ago, I've had just about every school-related volunteer job you can have. I've been president of the Ferndale Elementary PTA, the PTA Council, and the Ferndale Education Foundation. For the past 3 years, I've been on the Board of Ed Program Technology Committee and the Operations Committee. I was on Citizens for Quality Schools and helped get the school bond passed in February. I'm currently chair of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to make sure the bond projects go as planned. With these years of experience in working with the district, I'm taking my commitment to Ferndale Schools to the next level and running for a seat on the board. This is a very important election. It's imperative to keep on our current path of a balanced budget, increased student achievement, and innovative educational models. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Jim Flegger. I've been a resident of the Ferndale school community for 17 years. I've been married to my wife, Liz, for 24 years, and now 25 years. And she just gave me the look. And she's a 1977 grad of Ferndale High School. I have 2 daughters, Mariah and Paige. Mariah graduated in 2008, and Paige graduated in 2011. Both went on to college, and successful college so far, careers for Paige, and very successful for Mariah, so I'm very proud of both of them. I work for General Motors and have done so for the last 33 years. I'm a manager in the global HR department responsible for operations and global data management and privacy. The bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Michigan State. I'm currently on the board, have been for 2.5 years, and would like to continue to serve the district. Thank you.
Mr. Warnick.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here tonight. I'm a 27-year resident of the school district, father of 2 Ferndale High School graduates, and currently the grandfather of a 4-kids Grant preschooler who loves being there every day. I've been on the school board for 8.5 years, board president for the last 1.5 years, and vice president for 5 years before that. Taken 153 hours, which is actually 50 classes of school board administration through the Michigan Association of School Boards. Educational leadership positions in the district include Jackson PTA president, PTA council officer, PTA council president, anti-voucher campaign co-chair with Calumet, Michigan PTA board of managers, field service rep, Region D vice president, also Michigan Association of School Board Region 8 director for 3 years and recently reelected to that. And all of these positions have helped me lead this district forward in the last 8.5 years I've been on the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now begin the question portion of the forum, and we will begin, all questions will have a 1-minute limit unless we decide that you need more time. And we'll begin with Ms. Butters with the first question. Describe in detail the problem of student attrition, its causes and cures. Be specific about recent trends and what we are doing today.
Student attrition. So I think that something that we really have trouble with in our district sometimes is when we have kids in the district for a few years, and then they leave. It's troubling because it takes away from our community. It's hard for there to be any sort of consistency in the education of that child, and also it takes away from the community. We don't want to lose kids, and we need to work on academic achievement. We need to work on improving the performance of the students in our schools to make it easier for kids to stay, to make it easier for parents to feel comfortable keeping their kids in our schools all the way through senior year.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Well, I've been walking around the neighborhoods talking to people about the election, and I was knocking on doors, and I knocked on a door of a house that their children went to Ferndale for a few years and then decided to go to another school district. And I asked her to honestly tell me why she left. And her honesty was, I'll tell you honestly, but you can't use my name. So I said, okay, I won't use your name. She said, I was hiding behind test scores. I hid behind the restructuring from 10 years ago. But her honesty was that she didn't feel that there was a good element of children that went to our school district, which made me very sad because that meant maybe my kids were a bad element. So I told her that I had 3 sons that go to school here, 2 that have graduated and gone on to excellent colleges, and because of the rigorous academics that they received at Ferndale, they also learned compassion for those who may have had less than them. They learned tolerance for people of many different beliefs and cultures, and mostly they gained lifelong friendships of all colors.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I think the question of attrition is one both of students staying in school in general and people staying in our district. I think the bigger question for our district is students staying in our district, as Katrina mentioned. I've also walked around the neighborhood, and I've knocked on 300-400 doors now. And I've also talked to people who've sent their children elsewhere. I've talked to a lot of parents who've done the same. A worse element of student isn't something that usually comes up. What sometimes comes up is the test scores, and those will be a long, hard struggle to raise, but we can do that. But what often comes up is neglect, is being ignored, feeling that they're not being reached out to by the district, lack of promotional materials, bad marketing. Katrina and I have been both knocking on doors. What we've discovered knocking on doors is that if you do that, you can actually persuade people to stay. So one of the things we've proposed as a BOLD team is that board members, administrators, go from door to door, identify the parents with young children in our district, go to them, do exactly what Katrina did, exactly what I've done on a couple of occasions, convince parents to stay, because we can.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that strong retention rates equal strong community. When we lose our kids, the school system, the district, the system weakens, relationships are disrupted, We are constantly in need of trying to fill vacant spots. And then pretty much the people who leave are feeling negligent, like they've been ignored, and that we didn't care to find out as to the reason why they left. I believe that when people leave the district, I believe we need to make a valiant effort, a vigorous effort, to find out why they're leaving, what's their reason. I mean, it's almost like customer service. When you fill out a survey at a fast food restaurant, they're asking for your feedback. We need to do that for people in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes. Well, I think there are many causes for the problem with retaining families in the district. I think the solutions are probably as many as the causes. There are some easy things that we can do, things like making sure that we have the right customer service in the enrollment office so that people can get help right away. I've had friends tell me that that's a problem. There are obviously marketing efforts that we need to make a bigger effort on. Then there are the tougher things. I had two different families, mothers in Royal Oak Township, tell me that they pulled their kids out of the middle and high school because it was too chaotic. The environment was too chaotic. I know a family that moved from Oak Park to Bingham Farms for the same reason. Obviously, those things are going to require a little bit more effort, some policy structure and adherence, accountability at the board level all the way down through the individual building. And then, of course, we do have to do a better job of raising academic achievement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks?
My wife and I live in Pleasant Ridge. We send our two kids to Ferndale schools. There was never any question for us about where we'd send them to school. It's our community school. We support our community, and they love going to school there. Now, there are people in my neighborhood who send their kids to Ferndale. There's people who send their kids to Berkeley, to parochial schools, even one that went to Ferndale, then to Royal Oak, then back to Ferndale. Do I wish that everyone went to the same school? Sure, but I don't really think that's realistic. There are so many educational choices that are out there these days for parents. There's public school, private school, parochial school, charter schools. There are so many different factors that families use in their decision process about where their kids are going to school. I am a little confused over the clear proposal to tie our administrators' salaries to school retention. I think our administrators are great educators. I don't need them cutting deals like used car salesmen. I think our money is better spent raising student achievement for families who have chosen our district and are happy to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger?
We would love to have every student that lives in this district go to the Ferndale schools. I've spent the last 2 years on the Program and Technology Committee working on school improvement plans because in my belief it's about the product, it's not about the marketing. People will go to schools here if they think they'll get the education that they want for their children. We have people who have no choice in where they send their kids to schools. We have people who have many, many choices to be able to send their kids to a whole variety, as Brad said, of different choices. Our obligation as a board is to set the policy that would say to anybody who lives in this district, hey, Ferndale's tough to turn down. It's about the schools and the education that they can get here. And we need to do a better job at showing people that they have that opportunity here. But we need to keep on improving the student achievement. That's ultimately what's going to keep people going to school in Ferndale.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick?
Thank you. The problem with attrition is that Ferndale's been a transient district for many, many decades. People move in, people move out for various reasons, as already been said. What I like to see and cures that I believe is correct is to keep them in the district is offer the best programs that you can. We have open classroom, we have brain-based education for our elementary students, CASA for our high school students, dual enrollment, numerous electives at the high schools that we have. And one thing that we've always stressed in the administration and at the board level is high expectations for high achievement. And we're setting those bars high with the latest rounds of school improvement plans that we've put together, or the schools have put together for our district. And those high achieving expectations will keep more citizens and more students in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start the next question with Ms. Collins. Do you support the current salary and contracts of the superintendent? Why or why not?
Yes, I support the contract. I was, part of that. I agreed to and voted on them. He has not taken a raise in the last couple of years, and I should have written the rest of them down because I didn't remember the rest.
Do you want me to read it again?
Yeah, please.
Do you support the current salary and contracts of the superintendent? Why or why not?
Well, I don't know if maybe they were talking about the consulting contract. I signed that contract a year ago, and in that year, I have not seen any problems with it. I haven't seen any, he works 24/7 for the district, more than 40 hours a week. If, that consulting contract brings in about $180,000 a year to the district. If we didn't have that, we'd have to find that somewhere else. It's part of, selling services to get money for the district.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause?
Well, I think the current contracts are too long, the salary rates are too high, and there's not enough oversight. We have the highest paid superintendent in Oakland County. We have the fourth highest paid set of top administrators in Oakland County. I think with more attention by the board, more holding accountable, and less willingness to extend these contracts for long periods of time, with more attention to how the attention is being spent by the administrators, I think we could do a better job, and we could probably save some costs as well. In terms of the oversight and the contracts between the administrator and his own private firm, what I would say is this. The superintendent and the top administrators do not need distractions. Our district has enough challenges as it is not to be distracted by other things that they bring into their world in addition. The money that we bring into this contract is revenue, but we don't know how much it costs us, both in monetary terms and in the distraction that is spent on these other questions that have nothing to do with what our district does. I think those costs are a lot higher.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Well, regarding the contract, one thing I can say about a 5-year contract is that, one, it takes, for 5 years, I think you have a lot more time to kind of, make your mistakes and grow with the contract. I think you'd be much more accountable if there were more like 1-year contracts. It's apparent if you had a 1-year contract, you'd be far more up on your P's and Q's, so to speak, when you know that you were coming up for evaluation at the end of that year. As far as the contract in general, I believe that, contracts are fine, but us being citizens of this community, I think they should be they should be made public. We should know what they're about. When we ask about these contracts, we should be told what they are welcomely. And I think that's a problem with contracts right now with the superintendent. None of us know what it consists of, and it affects our district, and I think everyone here has a right to know.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. Well, there's actually two sets of problems here. The first is with the superintendent's contract. He is, as Kevin noted, the highest compensated superintendent in Oakland County. At the same time, the board is also responsible for what it offers and bargains with the teachers, and the teachers are the second lowest paid group of teachers in Oakland County, and that disparity is troubling to me. But the board is responsible for both. With respect to the contracts that he has, that the school district has with his private consulting firm, I just feel there needs to be much more detailed disclosure there. Whenever you have the same person who's on one end of the contract and then he's overseeing the people delivering services on the other end of the contract, that to me calls clearly for disclosure and the ultimate in transparency in terms of how much time is being spent on those contracts. So I think as a whole, the board could have provided much more oversight and with respect to all facets of the superintendent's contracts.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Consulting contracts in the district. My wife is a school teacher in Dearborn. She runs a Dearborn Science Department. She has a consulting contract with NASA. They do weather studies. They stand up on a hill and they have a kite and they take information about global warming. She's paid for this. As far as I'm concerned, consulting is a good thing for the district. If you can serve as the subject matter expert for your district, it shows that you have qualities that people are looking for. I'll also tell you that it brings material and other information that you need to the district. While my wife And also, my wife, we get the money from her consulting contract. We don't share it with the district. We keep it with ourselves for date nights and toys for the kids.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
I'm just going to tell you, I am not an advocate of turnover. A long-term contract is a good thing when you have a person who other people would like to have. How many people out there think Justin Verlander's 5-year contract is a bad deal right now? Probably nobody, except if you're a Yankee fan. This superintendent has done an excellent job for this district. The administrators are all well-qualified, well-respected, long-service people. So when you say, well, there's a great disparity between what the lowest paid teacher and the superintendent makes, absolutely. There is nowhere near that disparity between the highest paid teachers in the district and the superintendent. It's roughly 3 times. He is one of the most skilled people. He is desired by a lot of people. A lot of other districts have come and asked him to interview. He has said no, and we've locked him in for a 5-year contract. It was a good thing for this district.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Yes, regarding the superintendent's salary, yes, I support it. As you said, he might be one of the highest paid in Oakland County. He's been with the district for 12 years, and the average superintendent serves for 3. So he's one of the longest-serving superintendents in the county, and also one of the longest-serving in the state. Also has 30 total years of administrative service behind him. So he brings all that to the table and brings all that experience to Ferndale. Regarding the consulting contract, they work on Ferndale business first before they work on any consulting issues. It's been said that money is brought in to help the district. It's $180,000. It's also part of the state's best practices requirements. So that $180,000 over the last couple of years has given us the opportunity to bring in $600,000 more from the state to offset some of the $2 million that they've cut in the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
A lot of things trouble me about this particular subject matter. One of them is when I talk to parents and when I say, you know, did you know that our superintendent has this other side business? People are like, what? Well, you know, who is he really working for? You know, and it just, you know, perhaps it's all right, but we don't know because there's not a whole lot of information about the contract. We don't really know. And the other thing that troubles me is the nature of the business that he has is you know, advising other school districts about charter schools. And that troubles me. We're a public school district, and I feel like there needs to be an advocacy for public schools, and it's just, it just raises a lot of red flags for me.
Thank you. We'll start the next question with Mr. Deegan-Krause. What are your ideas and thoughts on teacher evaluation and merit pay?
This is a question that has been batted around for everyone in every state, in every part of the country. I'm tempted to say we should all get more time to answer this one because it's such a complicated question. I am a teacher. I get a small amount of my salary dependent on what I do or how I perform. But most of my salary is simply my salary as my salary. And I know that teachers can be forced into a corner if they are evaluated too harshly, if their performance is evaluated on the basis of students' test scores and so on. I think principals have a very good understanding of what teachers do and how to motivate teachers and how to make them work. And I think that's where we need to focus our energy.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
When I think of teacher evaluation, I think of teachers who I think of supports. I think of teachers who need supports in the classroom. They need to know that we're there they need to know that they can count on their administration, their board, and develop a strong relationship with them. Yes, I believe there should be evaluations, but also, with those evaluations should come the proper supports, the proper just encouragement, acknowledgement of a great job that they should have just throughout their tenure. The teachers in our district are wonderful teachers. I support them wholeheartedly. That's why I spend my time in the classrooms volunteering, and I enjoy every minute of it. So, yes, evaluations, but give them the supports they need. Show them that we're there for them, because without them, we wouldn't have the great district that we have. And we have great teachers here.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. First of all, with any with teacher evaluations, the primary emphasis of any evaluation system needs to be on helping the teacher or any employee improve. So giving them the feedback and the guidance they need to do a better job. If its approach is primarily a punitive measure, then that's problematic. Or if it's solely based on an instrument to determine pay, that's also troubling. But one of the reasons I strongly support Proposal 2 is because I think teacher pay and evaluation needs to be collectively bargained. It needs to be bargained between the school district and the Teachers Association. I would strongly oppose efforts for merit pay to be imposed by Lansing, because I think what that ends up doing is punishing teachers who don't have control over the students that come into their classroom, and perhaps merit pay can be used in an inappropriate way simply to tie the performance of that teacher with students that may be underprepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
When you talk about teacher evaluation and merit pay, you ask yourselves, okay, what is going to be the meriting thing that would improve the teacher's salary? One would expect that would probably end up being MEP scores, test scores. Otherwise, how are you going to evaluate how your student is doing? The issue with that is my son goes to Roosevelt. I see his third grade teacher. She comes in at 7 in the morning and she leaves at 7 at night. The teachers work so hard on everything that they can for the children. But you know, a teacher is only one part of your child's education. There's also the parental part of the education. And if a teacher spends a lot of time with kids doing everything they can, every different kind of strategy, but the parents at home aren't quite as interested, it doesn't seem fair to me that the teacher is penalized when there's a much bigger picture to this. There's not only teachers, but there's the environment and the parents as well.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
I will tell you I am absolutely in favor of merit pay for teachers, and the reason for that, and I want to be clear about it, I don't see it as a punitive thing. We have a lot of very, very good teachers in the Ferndale School District. We have a good number of excellent teachers in the Ferndale School District. And the excellent teachers are people who put a lot of extra time and effort into their class preparation and into their teaching methodology, into their own education and self-improvement. So those people deserve to be recognized for the extra effort that they're putting in. And I think merit pay for those people is a good way to say, hey, we appreciate that. We appreciate that our students are getting a good education from all of you, but we appreciate even more that our students are getting a great education from some of you. So it's a great way to recognize them.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Teacher evaluation has been around for a long time. We've been evaluating teachers every 3 years for many, many years. Recent mandates have changed that to a one-year process. What we have to do as a district and collaboratively with our teachers union is to make sure that we provide the best fair evaluation process we can. And that's something that we're currently working on. But once that comes to us to take, at the board level to take a look at, we'll evaluate that also, make sure it's fair. And if it is fair, then we'll implement it and work from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Butters?
As far as teacher evaluations, of course, as parents, we expect our teachers to be evaluated because we want to know for sure if they're, if they're doing a good job. Not all of us are necessarily, up on all of the latest teacher or educational methods, and we need to make sure that our teachers are, and I think that's one way to go about learning that. I have been in the classroom several times over the course of my girls' education, and I've seen the teachers at work, and I've seen how they use all these methods that we never had in school, and it's impressive. And I feel like we need to hold up all of our teachers up to those standards. And I'm not convinced about the merit pay issue. I think that we need to make sure that we're paying our teachers well, and that we're having high expectations for all of them.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Well, I think it's very hard to, come up with a fair way to evaluate teachers, because from year to year, they could have a different, group of children in their classroom. They do have a different group every year. We have curriculum specialists that help our teachers try to learn, give them the latest, teaching skills, strategies. I volunteer a lot in the classroom still, even though my kids are older, and I think we have wonderful teachers at Ferndale. You know, sometimes there's ones that aren't as effective as others, but we have curriculum specialists that help those teachers. I don't know about the merit pay. I would have to, you know, learn more about that. I'd have to research that more about how that would work.
Thank you. We're going to start with Ms. Leaks-May. Are there any board decisions over the last 2 years that you would change or that you disagree with?
Well, one of the board decisions over the last couple of years would probably be when the board decided to extend their own terms. The community really came out in opposition of that decision, and I felt the decision was pretty much made, and that even though we came out in numbers, large numbers, we weren't really heard, just as what has been pretty common on the board, at least what's been expressed to me in the community. What I think should have been done, or could have been handled more appropriately, is if it was left to the people to vote. No one should be able to extend their terms. We vote you in for a certain amount of time, we expect you to do that time, and then you run again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Well, I would key on two things. First, I strongly disagreed with the school board's decision to enter into a purchase agreement last year to purchase the Hayes-Lemmers property south of the high school. I think that was known to be, widely known to be, based on public reports, a contaminated site, and we didn't need to spend thousands of dollars to determine that. We made that decision without a business plan, without doing any kind of discounted cash flow analysis. We knew about the environmental risks and went ahead with it anyway. Ultimately, we were going to spend $8.5 million to buy that piece of property, to build a high school, to renovate it as an alternative high school, and then 9 months later we abolished that alternative high school and instituted a new digital learning center, which requires much less space. And then secondly, the contract extensions of the administrators, the superintendent in particular. I think that was a mistake. Justin Verlander has a long contract. That's good. I don't think the Yankees are happy to have Alex Rodriguez's contract right now.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
The trouble these days in the 24-hour news cycle is that everybody seems to want the information right away, and they don't want to wait to get the background behind the information to see what's really going on. When they talk about the Hay-Lemmers project, people go, what is it about? And they go, well, the board is looking into it. Well, I want to know what it is. Well, they're trying to get the information. Well, I'm against it. Against what? There has been no information released for you to be against. The problem these days with Facebooking and people talking among themselves is they won't even wait long enough to let the board look into something and make a decision that then the community can actually look at and analyze and criticize when they have some actual information. That's unfortunate these days that people are so anxious that they like to micromanage the board before the board even gives us a chance for something to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
So the only time I have voted against something on the school board in my official capacity has been a couple times when the board had to change the date of the meeting and I couldn't make it. So I voted against that. What I think people need to understand is a lot of the disagreements that happen on the board happen in the committee level. And those things are ironed out. And I would just suggest to you that the people who are saying they are against things now did not know exactly what was being discussed in all those committee levels. Some of the people in the audience do know, and because they attend those meetings. And I would tell you that the vast, vast, vast majority of the votes that you see, and they're all televised, by the board are 7-0. A few 6-1, and occasionally a 5-2. But they're talked about and they're agreed on, and the board generally is collegial, and they agree with each other on the best things to do for the district.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Well, I'm sure there's been a few times that I've disagreed with other board members over the last 8.5 years and the last 3 years that I've been on the board. But the process is, you disagree with it, you talk about it, you vote on it, and if your vote isn't a persuading vote, then after the vote is done, you stand as a collective board in support of the action that was taken. That's not always been the case in years past with past board members. And as Jim said, a lot of the votes that we have are pretty close to unanimous. I think 95% of the time, board members at that table all vote the same way. So there's been a lot of positives coming from the votes at the table from the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
My answer doesn't necessarily have to do with any one decision that the board has made. My answer is more about the culture of the board. What I observe with board meetings is that there's a lot of I'm worried that not enough respect is being paid toward the people who come to speak to the board, the members of the public. I sometimes worry about even just the board members themselves showing respect for each other, either at the table or outside of the meetings. There's another part that I'm worried about too is the committee structure, and I believe that the board needs to communicate why it's making its decisions to the community. And I really feel that sometimes, yes, it might get repetitive. We've talked about this in committee already. Yes, but we in the public who are here watching the meeting, we want to know what's the rationale behind these decisions. So that's what I disagree with.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Well, first I want to say I've never been disrespectful to anybody on the board or anybody that's currently on the board or ever on the board. I spend a lot of time going to meetings, going to committee meetings, and we discuss a lot. And at those meetings, there's community members, there's teachers, there's union members, there's citizens, and if there's lots of questions asked, and if you ask any questions, they're answered. I'm on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, and on that committee, we even have an agenda item called rumors. And things are asked then, and minutes are taken. People can, look at the minutes to those meetings. I feel that, I make all these decisions. I don't make any of the decisions I make on the board lightly, and
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I also served on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, and actually one of the things I was most disappointed by was that the sections on things that were going wrong was labeled rumors. It wasn't problems we need to fix, it was rumors we need to cover up or rumors we need to squelch. That was the main focus. How do we control the rumors? I have a lot of problems with a lot of the ways that the boards make decisions and a lot of decisions made. Raylon has mentioned some, Jim has mentioned some. But bigger than the problem about buying Hazelemmers or about contract extensions or about term extensions was the way that these decisions were made. Hazelemmers wasn't about the 24-hour news cycle or Facebook. It was about the fact that the district signed a purchase agreement for a property with enormous environmental liabilities to build a school that would have cost a lot of money without ever asking to see a business plan. The contract question is about the fact that the board signed a contract that said, we will do what's in contract X, when no one on the board except the board chair had ever read contract X. And the term extension was done in committee and then in the board as a whole. I went to all of those committee meetings. Those committee meetings weren't any better.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. O'Donnell. How will you engage the community in your decision making? And what is the best way for the residents to communicate with you? So how will you engage the community in your decision-making? And what is the best way for the residents to communicate with you?
All right. Well, this is a great question. It's one of my passions, is community engagement. First of all, I think that, of course, sharing information, sharing all the decisions that the board makes and the material the board uses to support those decisions is paramount. Things should be, the board packet should be published and shared online well ahead of the meeting, well ahead of the time that you have to, and the agenda should be published, well ahead of the time you have to ask for the board packet. You should know what the agenda is going to be. Second, I would be in favor of holding board discussion forums or meet and greet sessions in various parts of the community, having meetings to meet community members in all of the schools every year, in libraries and so forth, would be another important way to engage the community. And finally, through the strategic planning process, that's another opportunity to engage the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Yeah, we already have quite a number of ways to engage the community. Let's see, we have PTA meetings. We have PTA council meetings, which are also all of these are open to the public. We have the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, where Mr. Deegan-Krause shows up. We have the actual committee meetings where, as Katrina mentioned, anyone can come to watch and to learn the decision-making process that happened during the meetings. We have the Board of Education meetings, which have open sections for people if they want to ask questions. We have email. We have phone numbers to call the district. We have the address if you feel embarrassed and don't want to go somewhere, you want to write a letter. We have the address out there. You can write a letter to the district. It's up to you if you have a question to step up and say what your question is, not afterwards to go, hey, I never found out about that. You have to engage yourself.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
Every school board member has their own email address on their profile on the district website. I've been in this district a long time volunteering with a lot of different organizations. I suspect that probably half the people in this audience right now have my cell phone number in their cell phone. So I think there's plenty of ways, as Brad was saying, for people to communicate with the board. I have to tell you, one of the things that is very disappointing for a lot of us is that, unlike tonight, which has got a great audience, and thank you, we often have meetings where the attendance is low. One of the challenges that I have on the FAB board when I was the president last year, and I told everybody that came in, my challenge to you is to get 2 people to replace you next year. It's tough getting people to show up. Everybody is busy, but there are lots of ways, if you want to be involved in this district, to be involved.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
I think we do, as everybody has mentioned, good engagement with the community through our PTAs, through our board committees. We also have weekly highlights distributed through our e-newsletter every Friday. They've been putting board highlights on that for the last couple of years. And the best way to communicate with me, I've streamlined the contact information for the board. We used to be able to, used to have to contact every board member individually, know all 7 of the email addresses, plus the superintendents, plus the administrative offices, which would be 10 people, 10 board, or 10 email addresses. I've consolidated it down to 2, so it's simple and easy and effective. And to tell you the truth, since I've been board president the last year and a half, I think I've received 5 emails from citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
Engaging the community to me is a two-way street. Before I started having kids, I was a journalist. I worked in editing, in newspaper editing, and communication is a huge, huge priority for me. And for me, engaging the community is not sitting back and waiting for people to send you an email or to come to your meeting. I want to be able to, if I'm elected, I want to be able to actually go out into the community and to ask people, how are things going for you in the school district? What problems do you have? What could the school board do that maybe might be of interest to you? Do you know anything about the school board? Why not? How can I tell you more about the school board? There's so many different ways that we can go about doing that. We have all kinds of ways that we can communicate now, and I just don't think there's any excuse for board members to not be proactive and to try to get out there and communicate and get the people involved.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
I already do that. I do. When I get with a group of friends or a group of people at football games or at concerts or whatever, I will say, hey, how's everything going? You need to, know what's going on. There's a board meeting next week if you want to come to the board meeting. I do that. I do engage with people in my neighborhood, and the best way to reach me is by email, usually. And I kind of agree with Jim down there. It's very hard sometimes to get people to come to meetings. When I first was on the board, there was no one in the audience. We'd have board meetings that would go, every month, and not one person would show up. So even my neighbor, who has, she's a retired teacher from Ferndale, I said something to her about the Ferndale patch. She doesn't even have a computer. She doesn't even know what, is out there. So, besides, sending a letter to people like that, I don't know how that, I try everything I can to get people engaged.
Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I know Katrina does this because I've seen her, and it's really worthy, and I think it's all too rare. I think the answer to how to get people involved is to go to them. Do not expect them to come to the Warren G. Harding Administration Building and talk to you. Do not expect them to send you emails. I've been going to PTA meetings for 5 years now. I've never seen a board member at a PTA meeting. I come to city council meetings. I've never seen a school board member at a council meeting. I was chair of the library board for 5 years. I never saw a member of the school board at a library board meeting. These are important ways to engage with the citizenry, and you have to go to people if you want them to do it. We've been going door to door. Our campaign has knocked on 5,000 doors in the last month, and I know that picking people at random, not people in your comfort zone, but people out of your comfort zone, is a very important way to do it. There are lots of ways to engage people who don't normally engage themselves in the process, and when you do, you find they have opinions, you find they have thoughts, you find they want to be listened to. They just don't always feel welcomed over at Harding.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Well, we've heard about meetings, but I can tell you as a mother of 5, you'll see me just about everywhere in this district. You'll see me at Grant's Early Childhood End of the Year Picnic. I'm at the Fall Festival. I'm at the library, the bus stop. And I think what people find I think what people find is that I'm approachable. I think people like that and they enjoy that. I'm approachable. I'm accessible. You'll find me just about everywhere. As far as and I also would like to, I think that there should be a certain culture on the board where it's kind of an open door policy and build a level of trust. I consider myself sort of an advocate for people because I listen to you, I'm hearing you, and you can rest assured that should I get on that board on November 6th, I will hear you and advocate for every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. Parks. Recent NEEP data from the state revealed Coolidge achieving at less than 20 percentile. Kennedy achieves at greater than 70th percentile. What can be done to address this disparity?
Well, the school culture at the JFK school, as opposed to the school culture at Coolidge, are somewhat different. The JFK is a magnet school. It's a program where people attend by lottery, and then there's really no one else that comes into the JFK environment during that year. If there's a new kid, they're not going to go to JFK. They're going to go over to Coolidge. Coolidge, they get a lot of new kids. The new kids that come in, you're not really sure what their level of experience is, what their background is, and so they don't have the same protection that they do over at the magnet school, or say in the open classroom that they currently have now at Roosevelt and Coolidge, because they're just put in with the regular population. We have to use the teaching strategies that we have to reach out to these kids to figure out, for instance, the new data teams that we have, to figure out where the problems are with the child in their learning, and so we can attack those sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
It's not just a problem between Kennedy and Coolidge. We have the same exact issue between Kennedy and Kennedy. There are populations in our district that do not do well on standardized tests. There are populations in this district that do not do well on any kind of test. And our challenge as a board for the last couple of years that I've been on the Program and Technology Committee, and I know it's been going on for longer than I've been on the board, is to work with the teachers, the staff, and the administrators to come up with plans. They're the academic people, they're the educators. Most of the people on the board are not. We work with them to set the goal, which is to improve our students' achievement. And that's the role of a board member, and that's what I've been advocating for. We have school improvement plans, new ones, for every school in this district in the last 2 years. Scores have come up in some of the schools, but not enough for everybody. Everyone recognizes that, and everyone has that as a goal for our teachers and our staff.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Addressing the LEAP scores and student achievement is a constantly moving bar, and we have to continually assess the scores that we have in these individual schools. As mentioned, the data teams that the curriculum department have created will give them the ability to focus on individual student needs and address those needs on a regular basis. May not have been the case in the past, but that's the way it will be going forward. And once you address the individual needs of those students, you'll see, I believe, the test scores coming up. But I don't believe test scores should be the only or primary focus on what's best in the school district. I've never been a fan of the MEP, and I've been around for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
As Jim said, you know, I'm not a teacher, and I don't know what the answer is to raise the scores of our kids. I think it is a problem when we look at the charts and graphs and we see big differences, and that's definitely something that the school board needs to look at in terms of, you know, what can be done. We need to listen to the teachers, we need to listen to the building principals, and they're the ones who know what these kids need, and we need to do our best to give them what they need. We need to figure out what's the technology that we're behind on, or the technology that, you know, that we don't have in the classroom. What's you know, the support staff? What are some of the innovative programs that are available for different populations of kids, the kids that are needing extra help? You know, I think we go to the experts on this.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Student achievement, or the test scores, it's an ongoing important task that our teachers and our curriculum coordinators work on every day. We have school improvement plans that focus on school culture, reading, writing, and math. This year, data teams were formed that meet every Monday, and they collect the data from those 4 subjects, and the teachers can collaborate and make instructional changes so that each child is learning. Eventually, this will create kind of like an individual plan for each student. And soon we're going to be having the common score standards, and that will that most of the states have adopted, and that will help, you know, us create critical thinkers and that can compete in a global society. And I believe all those things, the data teams and common score cores and stuff, will help with the achievement.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I like being up here and being able to agree with Brad Parks. It doesn't happen a lot, but I'm pretty excited about it. I think there is a problem, a structural problem that exists at our elementary level because we have one school that is a magnet school and 2 other schools that are not, that are in sequence with one another. Along with that, we have questions and problems with the lottery, which parents who fail to get into the lottery often move out of district and so on. Sometimes this is attributed to Kennedy parents or kind of an atmosphere around Kennedy. But my question is, why doesn't the district, which is run by the people at this table, do a better job in that? Do we need a system where in one school the number of students who receive free and reduced student lunch remains the same for 10 years in a row, like Kennedy, or another where there are students where the share increases dramatically year after year after year, like Roosevelt and Coolidge? I think we have enough resources in this district that we can provide the resources to the schools that need them. And in this case, that's Roosevelt and that's Coolidge, and that's where we need to be focusing our energy.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
The MEPs are an assessment tool of how our students are doing collectively in this district and across the other school districts. I think what we really should be focusing on, first of all, we have very bright kids, but if we don't focus on the retention, and if we lose these students mid through their academic years, we can't have, there's no stability. And if there's no stability, we're constantly replacing students with other students, and we're coming in, we're starting over with these students all over again. So I think that what we really should focus on is retention, because maintaining that strengthens our district, and I think we would see higher scores, because no retention, no stability. And I believe a preschool student should graduate from here.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. As Raylon said, this question is central to the retention question as well. I believe part of it is culture at schools. I advocate for changing the policy that requires only new incoming students to go into the non-magnet schools, only going to Roosevelt and Coolidge. I think there's a way that we can do that, and I think as the challengers in this election, we have the experience with community organizing and community engagement that we can make that happen. We will get the buy-in from all the parents to do that. I think we need discipline policies that are stricter and enforced in all schools so that the teachers can teach, so they can do what they need to do. I think we need to test incoming students so that students that need remedial help will get it, so we don't have math teachers trying to teach students how to read. I think the public holds us accountable, so we need to acknowledge that we have problems with test scores and say what we're going to do to fix them and not make excuses.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Flegger. If state funding for schools keeps getting cut, what would you do to help balance the budget?
Well, state funding for schools has been getting cut, and that's been a pretty consistent pattern for the last 10 years. We lost $470 a student last year because of cuts to the education budget. One of the things that was the challenge for in our strategic plan is how do we come up with funds that are outside of the normal funding mechanism of the state and the city and the county. And we've done that successfully in Ferndale schools. We've done outsourced work for the city of Ferndale. We've done outsourced work for Oak Park. We've done outsourced work for, as some people would call it, that contract that the superintendent has. All of those things have brought additional funds into the district. And that's the kind of thinking that we need to continue to have, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have very little control over what the state does.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Well, I think you can expect the funds to be cut in the coming years. As Jim said, they have been over the last decade. They've either been flat, reduced, or reduced halfway through the year. And we've always been able to balance the budget and add sometimes a little bit to our fund balance, our rainy day fund, our savings account, sometimes more than a little bit. And as things progress and going forward, I think you're going to see a lot more challenges coming to school districts, because it's not going to be about strictly about funding. It's going to be about challenges of what the school districts are going to look like in the next 5 years with the changes that the governor and this private organization, the Oxford Foundation, is looking to do. And we're going to have to challenge that as a school district and as districts across the state. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We've always balanced the budget, and I think we'll continue to do that, as Jim said, with innovative ways, collaboration, cooperation with our other districts and communities near us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
Making cuts is never going to be an easy decision. And I've had some experience with a couple of organizations. I was on the subcommittee for the bond last summer when we had to sit down and say, okay, what are the projects we're going to put on this list to put to the voters? And we had to figure out which ones were the most important, which numbers and which projects we were going to include in that number. And we were able to bring it down a little bit, and present the voters with a little bit a smaller of a number. Just this morning at the Ferndale Education Foundation meeting, we came up with a situation where we needed to make some cuts in our budget plan, and it was tough. My priority is on the process. We need to make sure that we have a good process for making these decisions. We need to make sure that we include as many voices as we can, get the input from the community, get the input from the people that these programs affect, and make informed decisions on these really, important issues.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Well, like they said, we have been getting cuts over the last couple of years, like $400 a student last year. It's very difficult to look at the budget and try to decide where you're going to cut. Especially, you don't want to cut certain programs, don't want to have to cut staff because the biggest part of the budget is for staff and, benefits. It is very difficult to try to make these decisions. And when we have made them in the past, we have included people to, give us their voice of where they felt it, could be cut or couldn't be cut, or please don't, make us have to pay for sports. Please don't, take away our buses. Please, don't have us, have to, kids get a bus to a football game, but the parents have to bring them home from it. So it's a very difficult thing when you have to make cuts.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I think the elephant in this particular living room is long-term planning. Organizations around the world, school districts, city governments, particularly Ferndale City Government is a great example. The library, they do processes of long-term planning that are inclusive and bring in people from all over the community to talk about what their priorities are and how they're going to do it over the long run. In an environment where state budgets shift all around, where tax revenues shift all around, this district has not done a strategic plan since 2000. The district's current strategic plan begins with the line, a preferred future for 2005 and beyond. The board has met, they've reaffirmed some of the things in those strategic plan, but there has never been, since 2000, using 1990 census data, a long-term plan that was inclusive, that brought citizens, that brought administrators, teachers together to figure out what are our priorities now and how do we make the budget fit those priorities over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Well, first of all, budget cuts in any instance cannot be easy and is very difficult to deal with. I will tell you, as a member of the Board of Education Finance Committee for over 2 years now, I've had the experience of going over the district's finances and asking the tough questions as to where and how the finances were utilized. What I have to say about that is that with any type of budget cuts, and seeing as to how the state's always making cuts all the time, we would have to work with collaborate with our constituents and ultimately do what's best for the district. Collaborating with one another, doing what's best for the district. I don't see how, and although our decisions will not be easy and we will not please everyone, I firmly believe that the bold slate will work collaboratively with the board and do what's best for the district. And if you do what's best for the district, I don't think you can go wrong.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. I work for a nonprofit that's based in Illinois, and that was primarily funded by the government of Illinois. And if Illinois' budget problems make Michigan seem like happy time utopia, one of the things we did, though, when we were faced with 50% budget cuts from the state, is we used that as a reason to do more planning, to plan out more scenarios. We didn't say that because we have uncertainty, that means we can't do scenario planning like the superintendent recently told all of us. So, as Kevin said, this is a reason why we must do strategic planning. Strategic plans should be updated every year with real updates, not just reaffirming a 2000 plan. We can cut some central administration costs. We can find opportunities to share more services with other public school districts, which is just begun to be done. And if we are on the board, we'll protect our strengths: music, arts, and athletics.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Yeah, strategic plans in general are just broad brush approaches. I work at Ford Motor Company. We have a strategic plan. Their strategic plan says sell more cars. It says make better cars, sell them in Europe, sell them in Asia. It's a broad brush plan. That's pretty much what strategic plans do. I don't think there was ever a teacher in this district when a kid came and asked for help on an algebra problem and said, geez, I'm sorry, I have to check on the strategic plan first. So a strategic plan, while it is important, it's a broad brush approach, and that's what I'd like to say about that.
Okay. We're going to have two questions, and then we're going to stop. So this is second from last. And we'll start with Mr. Warnick. Describe the value of the adult education and alternative education program to the school district and society at large. What would be the consequences of a loss of either program?
Could you repeat the second part of that, please?
What would be the consequences of a loss of either program, the adult education and alternative education program?
The value of adult ed and alternative ed. Anytime that you can graduate additional students, education process is important. And graduation of those students that have made it a point to either come back to us because they've dropped out or sought out a different process of attending high school adds to our local economy. Their earnings grow for graduates as opposed to dropouts. So it's an addition to the state economy. We've been adding 260-some graduates every year for alternative ed for many, many years. The adult ed program's been around since 1940-something in Ferndale. At one time, we had 35 different locations and 13,000 students that we educated in one form or another. So again, benefits to the larger community, and that's the purpose for having adult and alternative ed programs. What would the consequences be? Loss of employees would be the main consequence.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
Our history has a long, our district has a long history of alternative and adult ed, and there are a lot of really, really great success stories that have come out of those programs, and I know that there are a lot of people that are very passionate about those programs. I think that there's some troubling things too that come out of the programs, when you're bringing in kids that have had some trouble in another school and they come in, and we need to make sure that we set our expectations clear so that we do run into some issues. We read in the headlines when something happens at one of those schools, or the neighbors of those schools, sometimes have some complaints. Where I really want to focus my energy in this question is, I think that we need to know what the community wants out of our school district. What is the vision of our school district? Does the mission of alternative ed still resonate with the people who live here? And I believe it probably does, and I think it would behoove us to continue it.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Being on the board for several years, I get to attend all the graduations from our 3 different high schools, and my favorite is always going to the adult ed and alternative ed graduation. There are stories that come out of there that they have, had 3 children, they've taken 5 buses to get there. They are very motivated students that, this is a wonderful opportunity that they're given, that they can come to our district and get finish up their credits to graduate, and they can become, more productive citizens. It is great for the economy. I can't remember the numbers of how much more a high school graduate earns than somebody that doesn't have but it's significantly amount of money, and I just love going to those graduations because we do offer such a great service, and I wouldn't want to see it go away.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I remember when Katrina spoke about that a couple of years ago, and I was really moved by it. I mean, it really is an extraordinary thing, and I think it's very important. And as my wife was sitting out in the audience will tell you, I got motivated to run for school board when I heard that we were going to put our alternative and adult ed kids in a former chemical testing laboratory. Since then, I've spent a lot of time thinking about working with people who study alternative education. And I'm glad that we're moving to a new model, a digital model. I think it has certain advantages, even though I was suspicious at first. But I've spoken to some people at Wayne State, at Western Michigan, and they say that if you're going to run an alternative education model that's largely virtual, even partly virtual, you need to start small, you need to make sure that there's community support, and you need to make sure that you have a strong student-teacher ratio. What I worry about are the initial indications. We've started extraordinarily large. We started at 1,000 students with this program. That's more than any other program has started with. Normally, programs start with about 15 or 60 or 100. We started with 60. We have a student-teacher ratio of 50 students per teacher. Other programs have 20, 15 per teacher. We need to do it better.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
I'd like to say that everyone's paths in life are very different. As a former student of adult education, I will tell you that I was lucky enough to have compassionate instructors, people, knowledgeable staff that believed in me, and as a result, my daughter has seen me graduate multiple times, and she knows what's expected of her, and I've become a lifelong learner, and I expect that of my children as well. I will tell you that I'm in full support of our adult education program and our alternative education program, because as I would want these adults to experience what I've experienced, I'd want them to have support. I'd want them to have all the services they need to succeed in life. And I would, being in support of that, I would say that as long as it's not expected, as long as it's not a moneymaker for the district, I will always be in support of it. It could be a great thing.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. Well, our alternative and adult education programs are an important and historic part of Ferndale schools. It does provide second chances for many people. That's why I support them. It's important that we treat them, though, as vital education programs and not as profit centers. We cannot allow alternative education to fail again in this district. When the school board voted last year to eliminate the current alternative ed and institute the digital learning center, that was primarily because that program was failing. So what do we need to do now? We need to closely monitor the educational progress with the implementation of that digital learning center. We need to make sure that it's meeting the needs of students, because those programs have to succeed, because those students are our students, and it is an important part of how we are measured and judged as a district.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Yeah, alternative ed is a big part of this district. When I was working on when people were coming in for the first day of school over there at Roosevelt, I had at least 2 parents come up to me and just ask me about the new alternative ed program, about the digital learning program, and they were very excited about getting their kids involved with that because of various circumstances, like Raylon mentioned, in their lives. They weren't really set for traditional K-12 education, and they were very excited about the alt-ed education. We've had presentations to at the program technology meeting from the leader of the alt-ed program about it actually having people attending it that they didn't really expect, like kids at home who were sick and they were unable to go to regular classes, and they were able to use that. I think it's a big part of the district. I think that the new digital learning portions that they're putting together are going to be a big use for us, not only in our district, but possibly for other districts.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
I think you would be not at all surprised to know that the people up here are passionate about education, so you cannot expect any of us to say we're against education programs, whether it's adult ed or alt ed or digital learning or K-12 programs or preschool. So there's no surprise there. What I think some people who don't understand the value of the adult ed programs and especially the new digital learning program is absolutely for those kids, and it is fantastic to see those kids graduate. But what it's going to really impact, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is the high school kids in Ferndale High School. The things that we are learning out of the digital learning program are going to change the way we educate kids in Ferndale High School. The ability to watch classes online if you missed a class, or if you didn't get it in class, you can go back and redo immediately. I mean, that kind of stuff is going to really make learning very, very different in the future.
Thank you. This is the last question. We'll start with Ms. Butters. What would be your highest priority on day one of duty as a board member?
On day one of duty as a board member, I think my highest priority would be to listen. As I mentioned earlier, my line of work before I had kids was in journalism, and communication is something that I feel is one of my strengths, and that's something that I would bring to the table as a board member. I know that the school board needs to listen to the community, it needs to listen to the administration, and it needs to be a liaison between the district and the community. And we have to constantly be working on that, starting with day one. People are always talking to me about, when they see me in meetings, that it's nice that I make sure that we listen to everybody's points of view, and I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I make sure that I'm hearing what people are saying, and I make sure that I'm understanding what they're saying, and that they're understanding what I'm saying, and sometimes it might not be so clear. And so I really try to work on that part of the communication process.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
My highest priority on day one is to let as many people know possible that I was elected, that I'm still on the board. They can still reach me. They can still reach out to me. I will still reach out to them. I will still be at every function there is at school. I do attend PTA meetings. I'm a member of the PTA. I find out the most information at PTA meetings because parents are very open at PTA meetings about what's going on in each school. I can't say that I've gone to Kennedy's, but I get their I'm on their email list, so I get their minutes and stuff from their meetings. But I occasionally go to the elementary PTA meetings, but I let people know that I'm there and they can talk to me.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
My first thing to do on that first day would be to get a lot of sleep and clear my calendar because it's going to be a long first meeting. There's a lot of stuff that we need to get started with right away. The first thing we need to do is make sure that everyone who comes feels welcome. They don't have to fill out sign-up cards and other things that might discourage them from wanting to talk. Second thing we have to do is get the strategic planning process jump-started. The process was approved by the board in May with the estimated choosing a vendor by July and completing the process by about now. We haven't even selected a vendor yet. The third thing I would do is to take those simple steps that we can do to improve the quality of our retention. That means getting administrators and board members to do home visits. It means improving the quality of our public relations very quickly, and it means improving the quality of our customer service at the contact level when you walk into the Harding Administration Building to register your students. Beyond that, we need to assign liaisons to various PTAs and to various school districts, and we need to create a generally welcoming atmosphere for people to come and talk to us.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Well, on day one as a board member, what I hope to see is a crowd, if not as big as this or yes, bigger. And I would also I would also be able to reiterate to you that I'm an advocate for you. I believe in this district, and I want you to know that I'll listen to you. People come to me just anywhere in the city. People come to me, so I think there's something to that. And I hope that when you come to the board meetings, that you'll know that I'm listening to you too. I want to hear you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. My biggest priority would be to rebuild trust with the community. I've talked to parents and educators at every school, every building in this district. I've talked to people that don't have children, people whose children have left the district. And there is a significant amount of distrust with the current leaders of the school district. So how can we rebuild that? First is through real active transparency. I'm talking about the kinds of things that I mentioned earlier, sharing of information, bringing meetings out to the community, board members actively working to get people to meetings that are not just held in one small corner of the school district. Second, reaching out to community leaders as well as residents to get them involved in all the processes that we've been talking about. That is an important way to both engage them and begin to rebuild trust so that they know we're going to do what we said we were going to do and that we are equally going to count on them no matter what their station is in life.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Yes, on day one, when I start, I think I would basically continue what I've been doing for the last 10 years working with the district. I would work with the PTAs. I would work with the vast email addresses and email responses we have so people know what's going on with the district. I would let people know, remind people again through our websites, through other ways that they access our information, what's available through the district. A lot of people, they don't have time to come out to meetings like this. A lot of people, basically, they interact with the district from their cubicle at work. They want to see the information that's there. They can watch our meetings on YouTube. They can review a newsletter if they can't make it to a PTA meeting. Just reinforce the communication that already exists through the district.
Thank you. Mr. Fleger.
Well, I'd just say day one is really about day 900 if I'm reelected to the board. I'd say I'd be doing the same thing that I've been doing for the 2.5 years that I have been on the board. My focus has and always will be what is good for the kids, regardless of how that impacts anybody else. I think my focus has been and will be support for kids that are having problems academically, but it's also support for kids who are doing really well academically and need increased challenges. And I think everybody knows I've been on the Finance Committee for over 7 years now, and my focus has been and will be that we have a balanced budget, that we can pay for the things that we promise our employees, and that we use our money effectively for the best interests of the students.
Thank you. Mr. Warnick.
Well, my first and always has been primary focus has been on student achievement in this district. We talk about that constantly. We talk about that at every board meeting. We have a lot of reports, more reports from our curriculum department than any other department administrator that we have. So student achievement has and should always be the primary focus of board members in this district. Give them the tools that they need to help the students at the high level continue to achieve, and at the low level bring their achievement level up. And secondly, the other part that I've been working on constantly for 8.5 years is legislative liaison, so to speak, bringing those issues from Lansing and Washington to the board table and to the larger community to get them involved in the process so we can effectively make proper changes for public education, not only Ferndale but across the state. And we get very little support in that area, so that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. We're going to start with closing remarks now, and Mr. Warnick, we'll start with you.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here. I'll just say a sitting council person recently stated, as for experience, there is no lower office than a school board member. He also said, as far as I know, the only qualifications for a school board is that the candidate be of voting age and reside in the district. Those two lines are absolutely right. So based on those quotes, my thought is apparently any warm body will do. You can vote for UQT or you can vote for district knowledge and experience. This is not in a high school class officer elections. This is serious education business, more serious than a dozen years ago in the voucher program. You need qualified candidates that have leadership positions in the local and state education organizations before coming on the board, that have been on the board listening and addressing district initiatives and negative legislation, been involved in board committees and attended board meetings long before they decided to be candidates. You need people that understand the state legislation being proposed and the serious impact it will have on our district. The candidates supported by CBE know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flegger.
So I'm going to read quick. So as with most school volunteerism, since you are here, you're going to get an assignment tonight. I'd like to ask you to encourage your neighbors to read our statements and our profiles, see what we have to say beyond what you've heard tonight. Then go beyond the talk and see what each of the candidates has actually done. See if they have a demonstrated history of involvement and commitment to school service through working on school board committees, PTAs, parent support groups, as volunteers or as leaders. Being a member of the school board means giving up a lot of personal time over 6 years. Do you know a candidate will fulfill that commitment, or do you just hope so? Being prepared for a school board or committee meeting means sometimes reading hundreds of pages of documents. Do you know a candidate will fulfill that commitment, or do you just hope so? Being a good school board trustee means working cooperatively with the administration. Do you know a candidate will do so, or do you hope so? This school board is responsible for the direction of our children's education, as well as $40 million of our money every year. Your vote is a serious responsibility. Please make a serious choice.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Parks.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Parks.
No problem. I think that voters are faced with a pretty stark choice for the future. Do you want a school board with years of experience and expertise, or a board with very little experience? Do you want a school board that has a long-term commitment to schools and to the district, or a slate that has a track record of leaving their jobs early for greener pastures? Do you want a school board that believes in the citizens and our school community and supported our school bond from start to finish, or a slate that checked their spreadsheets, hedged their bets, and doubted our community's commitment to education? Do you want a school board that worked long and hard for a balanced budget and money in the bank, or a slate that wants to risk our kids' future on an untested, radical new agenda? Do you want to vote for candidates supported by school principals, administrators, and school board members who know about the hard choices in public education, or a slate supported by career politicians looking for their next election cycle? I urge you not to make any bold, foolish choices. I urge you to vote for Keith Warnick, Jim Flager, Katrina Collins, and me, Brad Parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Well, for about 87 minutes, we had a good discussion of the issues that was fair in all respects. Right now, we're looking at more than 35 years that one small group has controlled the Ferndale School Board. It started out as a force for progressive change. It's now become closed off. However, several people instrumental in its formation have endorsed us: Nancy Geddert, Nancy Lennon, John and Jean Sterrett. They recognize it's again time for a new progressive change. For too long, people in groups who ask questions of the school board have been demeaned, disrespected, and been subjected to personal attacks. We've seen more of that tonight. If you want a school board that treats everyone with respect, that asks tough questions, plans, builds on our district's strengths, and holds administrators accountable, then vote for change. Join the mayors, council people, and other endorsers to vote bold, and I ask for your support in this election.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
Some of you may have been given the impression that I'm part of a radical slate. Am I radical because I wish to be instrumental in retaining our families? Because I believe in engaging the community? Because I believe in academic excellence for all types of learners? I say no. I would rather you all leave here tonight knowing that I will make it my mission to advocate for you, for this district, and for our community. I ask that you vote bold on November 6th. I'm Raylon Leaks-May, proudly the Ellen Bold. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Deegan-Krause.
I think we learned at least two things tonight. One is that Ford really needs to work on its strategic plan. The other is that the people up at this table are passionate about education, even the ones that we disagree with. And I think what we can say is that we, all of us, share that desire to make sure that our kids have the best possible education. If there is one difference, and I think it is a big difference, it is that the candidates who are collectively known as bold, like the other candidates, see good things in the district, but are not satisfied with that. What we see is a district whose good things are at risk unless we plan for the future, unless we retain parents, unless we move forward and think about how we're going to get to those next steps. And in order to do that, we need to invite questions. It's not right when someone asks hard questions to label them, to identify them as radical or somehow negative. We need to accept those questions, and if there is a difference between us, it is that the bold slate argues that those kinds of challenges make us stronger, not weaker.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Well, I've been on the school board for 5 years, and in those 5 years, I've seen the economy take a nosedive, people lose their houses, friends lose their jobs, funding to schools and cities taken away, and I've seen the cities of Ferndale and Oak Park even lay off police officers. But in those 5 years, I've seen the Ferndale schools do this. I have seen a balanced budget, and they add to their fund balance every year. I've seen a steady increase in test scores. I've seen Roosevelt Primary and University High School win awards for character and innovation. I've had 2 sons graduate with honors and get accepted at every university they applied to. I have seen a $22 million bond passed to improve facilities. I have seen the new digital high school created. I've also seen our district named as one of the top 100 schools for music education 2 years in a row. I've seen so much more, I can't mention it all in a minute. I have the experience, I have the knowledge to keep this district moving forward in a positive direction. I may not be the greatest public speaker, as you can all figure that, but I am a good board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Butters.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the audience for coming out tonight. I love our community and I love our schools. The Ferndale schools have an awesome legacy. I would like to be on the school board to participate in the decision-making process to continue that legacy for my daughters and for future generations. Some of you in this room might have lost neighbors who have moved, seeking a different school district. I do not want that to be the future of our district. Something I've learned in my experience is how important it is that everyone has a voice and how important it is to work together and collaborate on solutions. I assure you that I will be a strong voice for you and for all of our communities on the school board. Tonight we've heard different visions for our school district. On November 6th, I challenge you to pause and ask yourself, which vision do I want? Please vote for me, Amy Butters, the B in bold. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters would like to thank the audience, the candidates, and the Ferndale Cable, the City Cable TV for making this forum possible. We also want to thank the Tigers, who swept the Yankees 8-1. For further nonpartisan information on these candidates, check the League website for our voter guide, lwvoa.org. We have voter guides at the back of the room. The people who are here, as you leave, if you don't have one, take one. When known, rebroadcast times of this forum will be on our website, lwvoa.org. The League of Women Voters is funded by contributions from concerned citizens and businesses. Our membership is open to men and women over the age of 18. Remember to vote on November 6th. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I knew that one when I saw him hand her a piece of paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice to be up here with you.
Yeah, that was excellently done.
Thank you.
Two to go. Yep, there was.
What happened?
Oh.